Hey guys, welcome to my little guide here, or whatever you want to call it, the podcast, or me just simply going through all these topics that people have been wanting to get their answers on, facts, whatever you want to call it. This is basically just gonna be like an information sheet where I just go over these topics. It's gonna be unedited. It's not gonna be anything super special. It's gonna be quite basic, frankly. And the topics I'm gonna be discussing are stat priorities, talents, Azerite traits. I'll talk a little bit about positioning and kiting pattern, healing rotation or priorities, macros, comps, and add-ons. Okay, we'll get straight into it. Haste, mastery, versatility. That's going to be your stat order and priorities. It's nothing complex. I think people mostly know the answer to these things, but there are people that are still asking the question, so just want to get that out there. Talents vary on what you're facing. Always has and always will, probably. I think this will always be your basic or standard go-to spec that you play. Prosperity Soul. You can go Sem or Treeform against song comps. You'll mostly see it against machines, for example. People that don't have a lot of consistent damage, where you need to have that extra burst heal to pick someone back up if you leave crowd controls or whatever. Treeform is also great to trade it out against Thralls, for example, when they pop their incarns, right? It's basically a trade-off. But I find this to be the highest healing output, really, if you can free cast a lot and you don't see a lot of CC. So it's either just this spec or you play Treeform Semward. Some people will ask this question as well. I pretty much always play Wild Charge now, with no exceptions at all. I think you just benefit the most out of it, defensively and offensively, really. You could pick Renewal in some specific scenarios where you're often a target and you're only capable of dying in stuns. Meaning if let's use this as an example. If you face Rogue Mage, for example, and they burst you and you come out at 10% health and you need to pick yourself back up, then Renewal could be a go-to, right? But most of the time, you don't really need it in the current state of the game. Tiger Dash. The only scenario I could speculate and theory craft about that this would be better than Wild Charge would be if you're playing some sort of melee cleave yourself and you go up against another melee cleave and it's a healer race, meaning you have no chance of getting peeled by your teammates, then this could potentially be better to get away with. But most of the time you can just utilize Wild Charge and Wild Charge to your teammates defensively and play around with it that way, and it still comes out on top. So in other words, I literally play Wild Charge 99% of the times, and I've yet to find a scenario where I actually would think Tiger Dash is better. So your affinities, of course, depends on what you can achieve in the game and what your opponents are trying to accomplish as well. I guess most of the time you'll be playing Guardian Affinity in case you're a potential target. Otherwise, you can just play around with Balance Affinity and Feral Affinity, of course, to gain more of an offensive edge. Balance Affinity is usually picked against mages because it prevents you from being sheeped as well if you stand in a Mookie form, and you can still use spells such as Regrowth and Dispel in it. Mighty Bash, no question about it. You don't really ever play Mass Entanglement or Typhoon. I suppose the exception here would be the same scenario that I talked about before. If you're going up against double melees and it's like a healer race, then you might benefit more from playing Typhoon rather than Bash. This is, of course, assuming it's like a minute-long game, and it's not going to last longer than that, because if you play Bash in that scenario, you're most likely to just get a trinket out of the way, and then you won't even get it back before the game is over. That's like the only exception, probably. But same here. 99% of the time, I just play Bash. This row I've already talked about. Soul in general, if you're free, if you can cast a lot, you don't tank a lot of CC. Otherwise, against Comes with a lot of CC and a lot of bursts, like heavy 3-minute cooldowns. Then 3-form could be superior. People are probably wondering why you don't pick Cultivation anymore, as it used to be meta in Legion as well. It's because the healing output really isn't that great anymore. I think they over-nerfed the talent. Cultivation still contributes to your mastery, but I still don't think it's worth it. And in 3s, you don't really have that high of uptime anymore on it. And what else? It could be superior. It could be good in 2s, but I've been playing around with both Seymour Cultivation and Prosperity Soul in 2s, and I just like Prosperity Soul more. I find it more useful. Stonebark here in the next talent tree. Always, you never switch that out. Last year Germination most of the time. I've been playing around a little bit with his photo talent, but honestly I think Germination just comes out on top. The only exception where the photo talent could be superior is if teams are strictly and only sitting on one target the whole game, which is quite rare, and even then I don't know if it outweighs Germination. Honestly, it's hard to say. I haven't done that much testing either, and when I have tested it, it's been okay in some scenarios, and in others where I haven't had as much RNG and my life bloom not proccing that much, then Germination just seems more consistent and more reliable. That's what I'm getting to. Alright, PvP talents. Most of the time, you're gonna be playing Trinket, right? Relentless can be used against comps with a lot of CC. So this is a judgment call to make. You don't really have any way to generalize it and to script it. But an example I could give and think of is if I'm playing something like Turbo Cleave myself and I go up against perhaps a Fire Mage Holy Paladin X. In this case, maybe FMP. That's like the first thing that comes to my mind. It's a comp that has a lot of spammable CC. And playing that Turbo Cleave, you have a lot of utility as well. Like you have classes that are able to keep themselves alive while you're sitting on the CC. So in that sense, Relentless could be superior. But as I said, it's a judgment call you gotta make. Trinket is obviously not bad in that scenario either, because you could just scriptedly Trinket Incarn, right? Trinket Incarn, pop 3-form, keep your team at good health. So yeah, it's about personal preference as well, and as a judge, it's a judgment call. As I said, it's hard to generalize. Something you do pick baseline though is Focus Growth. This one you never switch out. Not in 2s, not in 3s. I've seen some people switching it out in 2s, but I find it to be better almost all the time actually. Cyclone is pretty baseline as well. Sometimes you will switch this out depending on what comp you're playing yourself and what you're playing against and what you're trying to accomplish, and if the opponent team is actually allowing you to play offensive and utilize this talent. This is the talent you're gonna be switching around every time you do make a change. Revitalize is great against double melees or even just a melee most of the time. I never pick Thorns in 3s. The exception is if I'm switching out Cyclone, then I might be running Thorns as well, but I tend to prioritize Revitalize over it. Against double casters, I almost always go Nourish instead of Revitalize. Overgrowth can still be used against mages. Keep in mind it costs a lot of mana though, so you could actually yourself if you do play that talent. And once again, it comes down to the situations, what comp you're running, what the opponent team can accomplish, and what your game strategy is really. If you're playing, run this scenario. If you're playing Turbo and you go up against RP, for example, you might have pretty fast games, right? Most of the time you're gonna want to be running down the priest, which means you need to keep your team offensive all the time. And if you're playing Druid against RP, you might be sitting in a lot of CC as well. So Overgrowth is nice too. It's nice to apply all your hots once you come out of that CC, since the mages will be using Kleptomania once they land crowd control on you. But yeah, I think either Norwich or Overgo for both viable talents. Okay, next up, Azerite Traits. I'm not 100% sure on this topic yet. What is the best? Prior to the Group 10 nerf, which is the Swiftman one, 3 of those used to be best in slot. I think it potentially might still be your go-to, especially if you play the Soul Prosperity combination. But I don't want you guys to quote me on this exactly, because I have a different gear set in mind that I think might be the runner-up as well, or a strong contender. And it's getting this head from older. It drops from Vectis. It has all of the traits, all of the rows are great actually for this. And if I'm running this setup, I would probably go for the Archive of Titans, Woundbinder, and then get the Ursoc's Endurance. And along with that, I would also pick the Shoulders from the World Boss, drops from Doom's Howl. It's the shoulders right here. I will get the Awakened Dream trait, the Azerite Veins, and then the Vice Edge. And combined with that, I would probably just go for the PvP chest that you can already get from capping. So, and that one has a Group 10 on it already. Group 10, Earthlink, and then just Endurance as the third. So it's either that gear setup, or it's just still triple Group 10. As I said, your Swiftman trait. But I think the Group 10 traits becomes less appealing as well if you're running the Semward Treeform spec, which just makes the other one stronger as well. And keep in mind, you only want one of the Awakened Dream traits as well. So if you don't have access to the shoulders, you could just use it on the head, for example. If you got the head from Vectis, could just use the Awakened Dream on this one instead, and then use the PvP shoulders, which I'm using right now as well. The PvP shoulders are actually pretty good. Approximately 690 int. And the uptime on it in a game is quite high actually. The tier 2 and the tier 3 traits are pretty good as well. You got Woundbinder on this one, and then you got Azerite Fortification, which is probably your strongest tier 3 trait, honestly. This one's super good. Yeah, either one of those sets. I'm not 100% sure yet. I think both are viable. If you're strictly playing Soul Prosperity, triple Group 10 might still be the best after the nerfs. I'm not 100% sure. At some point I'm probably gonna get both gear sets and be able to do some proper testing. I will say this though as well. The reason to why I'm not using Group 10 right now and I have like a less appealing head is because of the item level. I think that item level outweighs your Azerite traits, assuming your Azerite traits aren't insanely overpowered. I'm going for the item level now because Group 10 has gotten nerfed, and my Group 10 pieces are 340, 345 in this case, while my other ones are 385. So I think that just outweighs it really, and that's my reasoning for picking that. Okay, some people wanted me to touch on positioning. This is a bit more generalizing it, but I'll just talk a little bit about it. You can't really generalize positioning because it depends on what you're trying to accomplish in the game and what your opponents are trying to accomplish in the game. So if you're playing a comp such as Rogue Mage Druid, for example, you're generally gonna try to be quite offensive in that comp, meaning pushing in with your team, landing crowd control, and helping your team win. But you can't really generalize it like that either, despite you playing a heavy crowd control comp, because in some matchups it might just be better if you stand back and you PV heal, right? So this is a judgment call and a situational call you gotta make that comes off experience and understanding the matchups, how they go. The other example would be if you're playing more of a passive comp, where you're not going to be pushing in for CC, and an example of that would be you playing a melee comp such as the Turbo perhaps. But there are scenarios where you will play offensively as Turbo as well, where you will leap in for the bashes, or you might be threatening people with cyclones and such. So it's very hard to generalize. It usually depends on the scenario that you're in. Meaning if your team has all the momentum, you could of course accomplish more offensively and go for riskier plays, or not necessarily riskier, but you can go for more offensive plays, assuming it's safe to do so, which is also something you gotta realize in that scenario. But if the opponents have all the momentum in the game, you're probably gonna find yourself more defensive, right? Backed by the pillar with your team, just pillar humping, trying to pick everyone back up. So it's really hard to generalize, honestly. And the best way to come to these realizations is by just practicing a lot, right? And watching streams, honestly. Like, watching streams is the best way to learn right now. There's so many healers streaming. There's so many DPSers streaming as well. You can just watch and learn, really. Try it for yourself. Kiting pattern, it's pretty much the same thing as well here. It all depends, but if you want me to generalize it somehow, you will most of the time be kiting back, meaning you will drag the people that are on you away from their enemy healer. This is assuming you're playing with a teammate that has the potential to apply crowd control effects to the enemies. Meaning, if you're playing with a mage, you probably want to be dragging the DPS in the back so that your mage can sheep them up without the enemy healer being able to dispel them. And if the enemy healer pushes in for that dispel on their DPS, it's gonna put them in a risky position where they might be getting CC'd instead. There are scenarios where you are playing with melees, for example, and you don't want to be kiting the DPS away from your melees because it might be better to run into your teammates so that they can peel you instead. So this is very hard to generalize as well. It really depends on the scenarios. Sometimes you're better off just pillar humping, just running around it in Terraform over and over and over again, instead of just tanking people and using your mana and your cooldowns instead. So once again, it's something that comes with game experience, and it's pretty difficult to explain in theory as well. You could showcase different scenarios in clips and such, but unfortunately, I don't have the experience when it comes to editing, and the experience and the skill when it comes to editing and such. So I can't showcase any of that. But once again, if you're generally curious about kiting patterns and positioning, you can just enter streams with these questions in your mind, and then just ask yourself, why is the streamer doing this and that in each scenario, and then just try to understand yourself why the person is doing what he's doing, and what he is accomplishing by doing so as well. That's like the best general advice I could give on this topic. Okay, moving on. Macros. Macros are always personal preferences, really. There are a couple that can help you out. Of course there are. The most basic and general macros that everyone uses and would advise you to use are these focus crowd control effects, right? Here's just me having a macro that allows me to clone my target, and then allows me to clone my focus target if I use my shift modifier. So it's basically a focus clone macro. I have the same for the bash, and also for wild charge. I think it's right here. No, that's a different one. I have so many macros, guys, as you can see. It's all messy, but I have like a focus wild charge macro as well. It's nothing super advanced, really. Like, macros aren't gonna make you insane at the game. It's more of a convenience, right? It's more of a little help that might make things easier. This is actually a macro that I could suggest for you guys. It's very useful. It allows you to wild charge to your teammate while you're in normal form. This one in particular wild charges to party 1, which is my first party member, as it sounds. You could exchange this line to a name as well, and it works. But I just keep my macros this way. I know some people prefers to use the names, but I just look at my frames instead, and I press it. So it's what I've gotten used to, and I recommend that more than the other one, honestly. I think this is better. That way you don't have to edit your macros all the time when you switch teammates also. I have this same macro, but for part of the spell as well. Well, I'm gonna show you guys if I can find it. It's right. It's not there. We'll never know where it is. Party. Here it is. It just dispels party 1, party 2, and then I have one for myself as well. So yeah, those are the kind of macros that I would advise to you guys. But it's personal preference really. At the end of the day, the difference probably isn't that big, and it comes down to what you prefer and what you're used to really. Outside of this, I use Arena 1 to 3 macros as well, such as Arena 1 to 3 Cyclone. I have Bash. What else do I have? I don't have Root. I think that's it. I have Arena 1 to 3 Bash and Cyclone. Once again, you don't really need these kind of macros. What some people will do is just having your Arena 1 to 3 focus keybinded, meaning so that you can swap around focus all the time, and then you just use their focus CC. Meaning you have a macro or a key binding to put focus on the arena enemy 2, and then you just hit your focus cyclone macro, and then you CC them that way. I use both, and it's just what I've gotten used to. There's no big edge with using either, or there are small minor edges, which ultimately probably won't matter too much in the game. So once again, personal preference. I have one of these MMO mices as well that allows me to have these many keybinds. Some people don't use these mices and just have normal ones, right? And then it might be more difficult to have access to this many key bindings, and with that have these many macros too. I'm trying to find the cyclone macro. Here you go. This is how it typically would look like. It does what it says. It cyclones the arena enemy 1, and instead people, what else? I'm gonna show you guys exactly what people otherwise do. You can bind this through key bindings now. So let's see, targeting, enemy focus. There you go. This is what people will do. The keybind focus arena enemy 1 to 3, and then they just swap their focus around all the time, and instead just hit this macro up here, right? The focus clone or the focus bash, whatever it might be. Personal preference. At the end of the day, probably doesn't do too much. Just to recap it. Okay. Moving on to comps. The two comps that sticks out the most for me right now would probably be Turbo Cleave, which is the Arms Warrior Enhanced Restoration Druid, or RMD, Rogue, Frost Mage, Assassination Rogue. I think those combinations might be your go-to as of right now. You have a couple of other comps that are good too. Moonkin Enhanced Restoration Druid. It's viable. Honestly, anything combined with an Enhancement Shaman right now as a Restoration Druid is very good. The third one almost doesn't matter too much. You can sort of make it work. And a big reason to why Restoration Druids are viable right now is because of that Enhancement Shaman being extremely strong. I'm fairly certain we're gonna see a nerf to that in the near future, but I would say R&D and Turbo will probably be your best comps right now, as well as Enhanced Moonkin Restoration Druid and Enhanced Frost Mage Restoration Druid. Like, those comps are pretty good too. Although those other two that I mentioned, Turbo and R&D, will probably be better in general, and you'll come further on ladder with it, as an example. Okay, last thing I want to talk about, add-ons. Once again, personal preferences, right? You can customize your UI really with no limit. But these add-ons I will strongly recommend to anyone really, especially playing healers. And I will tell you guys why exactly as well. Omnibar, first of all, I think you all know what it does. It displays it displays your opponent's cooldowns, such as kicks, defensive CDs, crowd control effects. I don't think that needs an introduction to why that is useful. What else do I use? S Arena, of course. I think most of you guys know what it does. It's just a modified, version of the arena enemy frames that you can customize yourself. The space trinkets, the art tracker has this aura watch as well that displays CC in the portrait. I find that very useful. And the alternative to this would of course be Gladius as well. There's no big difference to it, and there's what's it called? It's about personal preference here as well. Both does the same thing, okay? So it doesn't matter which one you use. It's about what you prefer. Then I use this one. It's called Tell Me When, so I can track the DRs on myself. So I know when I'm coming off stun DR, when I know I'm coming off sheep DR, whatever it might be, any CC DR really. And this add-on is so good as a healer, because it's so important to know as a Restoration when you're coming off that stun DR, so you know whether you should be trying to pre-shapeshift a CC or a stun or whatever. This one's very good, guys. Get this one. What else do we have? I think that's pretty much it. Oh no, this one I wanted to recommend. Arena Team Tracker. It's also known as Party Ability Bars, to track your enemy CDs. Or sorry, not your enemy CDs, but your partner CDs. Currently I had it disabled because this one is an updated version. I'm gonna show you guys real quick how it looks like. I don't think I can display it now that I'm not in a group, but most of you have seen this on my stream already, and it's great. You can just track your teammates' CDs. You can look at them while you're sitting in crowd control, whatever. Of course, this isn't really necessary if you have good communication within the team, but you should not really be relying on that either. And most of the time, people aren't the greatest at talking about when they have the cooldowns back, and it's quite easy for you to just glare it real quick if you're sitting in a CC, as I said, just to know exactly when your teammates' cooldowns are coming back up, and so that you can manage for your team's defensives as you should as a healer. It's your responsibility. But yeah, those are the add-ons that I find crucial to have as a healer, and the most helpful as well. As I said, you can use more as well. There are more things you can get that could potentially help you along the way also, but these are the ones that I'm utilizing and I find big use of as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I think those are the topics that I wanted to discuss. As I said, it's really nothing special. It's to cover the basics of Restoration Druids in the current patch, and all the frequently asked questions that I get on my stream. And yeah, these are my thoughts. This is where we are right now. This is where Restoration Druids are right now in the current state. And yeah, hope you guys find this video useful, and I'll see you guys on the stream.